Hey Spuddies, Potato McWhiskey here, and welcome to Civilization 6, where we're going to be checking out the new leaders, giving you my opinions, giving you my reactions to them. We have our 4 brand new leaders who have not had their abilities announced yet before I made this video. There'll probably be screenshots and stuff up in the community. But we've got Abraham Lincoln, Saladin Sultan, and Nzinga Mabande and Julius Caesar. So let's start off with Abraham Lincoln. Industrial zones give +3 loyalty per turn, but your plantations give -2 loyalty per turn. Receive a free melee unit after constructing industrial zones and their buildings. This unit does not require resources when created or to maintain, and receives +5 combat strength. I think the loyalty part of this ability is incredibly meh. Like, who cares? Who asked? By the time you build an industrial zone in most of your cities, loyalty should no longer really be a factor. So I don't really see this being a major benefit to the civilization, in all honesty. The interesting thing is actually, if you play in the base game, if you go to the standard rules, I think this ability actually gets an awful lot better. The reason being is industrial zones now give +2 amenities, but I do think you're better off playing with the more modern game. So that's something I wanted to point out there, is that like I think this could have been better, because you could get because getting free amenities would be just like so much better. I will say this. The free melee unit after constructing an industrial zone is quite interesting because you don't need the resources to make that melee unit, and industrial zones are relatively rushable. So the unit that is available at industrial zones is the man-at-arms, and this will always give you a melee class unit, as far as I can tell from the text. I haven't actually played around with it yet. Now, the important thing about this free unit is that it does not require resources when it's created, nor does it require resources to maintain, which means any infantry units you combine with that later on will be free to maintain as well. And it also receives +5 combat strength. +5 combat strength is what I would consider to be a strong combat bonus. So if you can somehow manage to get your hands on a great general and a person who you can attack, like, you could very easily get 6 cities out, make 4 to 6 industrial zones. That's like between 4 and 12 man-at-arms. They do take a while to appear, but I think you could make a very successful push with a great engineer and a 6 to 10 or 6 to 12 men-at-arms. Especially because when you're playing as the Americans, you have a lot of extra diplomatic policy slots, which gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of the government that you can play. And as well, the industrial zones themselves lend themselves towards giving you more production, which can potentially support your war effort. Like, you get rewarded for building these. Now, I don't think man-at-arms are that expensive, but I still think, this could be a very effective man-at-arms push. And then also, if you rush the industrial zone across an empire, I think the build order for Abraham Lincoln might be to actually basically ignore culture, essentially, and to rush for both industrialization and then use all the early great engineers to build a bunch of wonders to transition into the late game, and then use all the free wonders to kill your nearest neighbor, and then you have the essentially 2 empires worth of tourism to throw at your enemies, which I think would be quite an effective strategy. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Khmer. I wouldn't say this is like the most game-breaking or a powerful ability. I think it's a reasonably interesting one, and I think it'll have a lot of intrigue. The one that I think actually breaks the game is Saladin's Victorious ability, with the 100% flanking and support combat bonuses to all combat and religious units. So I feel like the fact that it'd probably be a good idea if I compared it to the regular Saladin, just so you can see what's going on here. So just give me 2 seconds. So normally for Saladin, the worship building for the religion can be purchased by any player for just 1/10 of the usual faith cost, and this is enhanced to give an extra 10% science, faith and culture to Arabian cities. Whereas they still have the Last Prophet, the Mamluk, the Madrasa, whereas Saladin, the Sultan, they have 100% flanking and support combat bonuses for all combat and religious units. This is when you first read that, you're like, oh, that doesn't sound very good. That doesn't sound very good at all. But when you consider the DDAI gets +4 combat strength, okay, to make their units stronger. With this bonus, you just need to have 1 unit adjacent to a unit you're attacking to negate that bonus. Let's say you take a horseman rush, right? And you put 3 horsemen adjacent to a unit, you are getting +8 combat strength, okay? That's like crusade level combat bonus. If you could surround a unit, or I think 2 to 3 is like the normal amount that you're going to get adjacent to a unit, but if you can get 3 pretty consistently. This is a lot of damage. And then you consider also horse category units, if you can keep them around a long time, if you can level them up, they can get 100% flanking bonus. And I think also on the defense, the support bonus is huge, because now when people are counter-attacking you, right, if you have a unit and you could very easily get +4 units surrounding your unit, which means you're getting +8 base combat strength, Saladin Sultan is getting +16 combat strength on the defense with support bonuses. The only way to break that is with ranged units, and ranged units are quite easy to counter, all things considered. So I think Saladin Sultan is just kind of like actually a little bit bonkers. I definitely feel like if I was making a mod to try to balance the game, I would lower this to 50%, so that, yeah, it just, I don't know, it seems a little bit crazy. I feel like this guy's horseman rush is like insane now. But otherwise, like I think, you know, we talk about we talk about the leader bonus in isolation, but it's actually not in isolation. Like you could still get a single holy site to generate a religion. You still get the madrasa, so science is definitely very encouraged. You can do a very early night rush. There's a lot of really interesting things you can do. I feel like this is now a night rush and a Mamluk rush civ. Like with this leader, that is what he can do. He can rush you with horses, or he can delay that rush and rush you with Mamluks, and both of those are genuinely terrifying, especially if he goes for an early enough campus and he gets the Abu al-Kazim, I think it is, or whatever the great scientist is that allows your units to heal more. And also if he just finds other sources of healing, like if he gets an apostle that has the medic promotion, like that's actually legitimately insane for Mamluks. There's just insane potential for this civ to like just go crazy in the mid game. Next up we have Nzinga Mabande. She is Queen of the Ndongo and Matamba. Cities receive +10% yields if they're on the same continent as your capital, including your capital, and -15% if they're on another continent. This is actually pretty comparable to Lady Six Guy, right? If we take a moment and just swap over to her. +10% to all yields if they're within 6 tiles of your capital. So I'd say that's like very, very comparable to Lady Six Guy. I will say this is like a little bit boring of an ability. I think these alternative leaders, I think Abraham Lincoln's ability so far is the most interesting, but I think in terms of power and also like potential for new gameplay mechanics, this is pretty low. So I think I'm not going to say they're bad. I just think they're like slightly boring. However, you know, this is just a really good SimCity civ, right? You consider Mavemba Nzinga, right? Now, the important thing about Nzinga Mabande is that she can actually build holy sites now. Compared to Mavemba, who can't. And that's really, really important because you still get the Mbanza, right? And when you finish the Mbanza, sorry. That's actually a Mavemba ability. No, I'm wrong there. So you don't actually get the Apostle when you build an Mbanza. Well, still, you get a really early Mbanza, which allows you to grow really, really big cities. So you don't have to worry about getting like, you can kind of maybe even skip a lot of housing stuff. Like you might be able to skip granaries on this civ. But if you manage to get a relic, an artifact, a sculpture, because she still gets the 50% more great artist and great musician and great merchant points. So you're definitely still going to be building theater squares. You're still going to be building commercial hubs. In fact, I would say those are the 2 main districts that Congo builds. But you do have the option to go for holy sites now as this civ, which I think really opens up a new way to play Congo, because Congo is kind of busted. If you like look at this civ right here, like this civ is just kind of insane. But with Nzinga, now you can do monumentality, classical era stuff, and monumentality is like the meta. Like it is the correct way to play. You do monumentality, and then you maybe follow it up with some other thing. But yeah, the fact that she can just go absolutely insane with a monumentality classical era could like really launch her up into a really higher echelon, especially because she's getting 10% extra yields. And 10% extra yields might not sound like a lot, but it's actually an insane amount of tempo, like a ridiculous amount of tempo. Like having 10% extra culture, 10% extra science, it means you research things. Like if it takes 20 turns to research something, she gets it in 18 turns. And not only does she get that thing sooner, she starts benefiting from it sooner. So like just imagine if you had like the ability to set like the time scale of the game for production and like technology and gold. It's like her time scale is just 10% shorter. If someone else takes 300 turns to get to the end of the tech tree, just like raw, she'll get there in 270, but she'll probably get there in like 250 because of the compounding snowball bonuses of reaching certain important milestones. So yeah, I think 10% might not seem like much, but it's actually a huge tempo boost. I definitely feel like she is better than Mavemba. I definitely feel like this is actually just strictly an upgrade to Mavemba, purely on the holy side ability, the ability to be flexible and do all sorts of really interesting things. I think this is a really, really fun and interesting civ. Now, you still have the Ngao Mbeba, so you can do either an early swordsman push, although I do feel like early swordsman pushes aren't as strong as they used to be in Civ ever since the implementation of the Man-at-Arms. The Man-at-Arms kind of overshadows the early swordsman push now because the AI gets out of Man-at-Arms and then it's like, oh, your push grinds to a halt. The Mabanza is really nice to +5 food, +2 food, and +4 gold when you properly support it with Nikisi, right? You get a couple of relics, you get a couple of artifacts, you get a couple of sculptures in that city. All of a sudden, you're cranking out +8 food, +8 production, or +6 production, +4 fate, all that sort of stuff. All that stuff starts to come into play. Definitely a really, really fun and interesting civ. Mostly like for building really big, powerful, yield-filled cities. So yeah, I definitely think she is quite interesting. And now we have to come to Julius Caesar and Trajan. And I think Julius Caesar is... I'm trying to think about Abraham Lincoln. I think Abraham Lincoln is actually strictly a downgrade to both of the current existing Americas. Like in terms of just like raw power, because Bull Moose Teddy has like a huge amount of science and culture tempo, whereas Abraham Lincoln doesn't really do anything for you until the mid game. And then Teddy Roosevelt has like insane combat power tempo and insane envoy tempo and an extra unique unit. So like while it is a fairly late game civ, they do have abilities in the early game to make up for that. Whereas Abraham Lincoln has no abilities in the early game, except Founding Fathers, to make up for his power level. So I'd say Abraham Lincoln is like strictly a downgrade from these two. However, it is at least an interesting and new and interesting play style. Because like if you think about it, right, the free unit does not require combat resources and it has +5 combat strength. That's just like Teddy Roosevelt just gets that on his home continent everywhere for every unit from the beginning of the game. So like strictly, I would say this guy is just like a straight up downgrade compared to these two. But at the very least, it is an interesting new way to play the civ. Julius Caesar and Trajan are an interesting comparison, and the reason I brought up the downgrade thing is because I think Julius Caesar is actually strictly a downgrade over Trajan. However, Julius Caesar is an interesting civ because he's a win more button, and I think win more buttons are really not very interesting. Another example of this is probably Macedon. If I take out Alexander here, for example, right? Alexander has a lot of win more buttons. So when you conquer a city that's not a free city, you receive a Eureka and an Inspiration. So that's like, in order to benefit from this, you already have to be winning. So that's like an example of a civ with a win more button, or like if you're already winning, you benefit more. And the vast majority of time in civ, you're not actually winning. So a button that only helps you when you're winning, or like an ability that, I say win more button, but it's really any ability that only helps you when you're already winning is inherently a weaker ability than any other ability that helps you when you're not winning, right? So Trajan, if you imagine, Trajan starts the game with +2 culture per turn, an injection of 240 gold on standard speed, I think it is. That's like an insane tempo boost, like a ridiculous tempo boost. And every time he makes a settler, he gets an extra 240 gold. So like if you make 3 cities as Trajan, not only are you ahead, like massively, in terms of gold compared to Julius Caesar, who gets no free monument and gets 100 gold when he conquers a barb camp and 200 gold when he conquers a city, right? So even conquering a city doesn't pay for the monument that Trajan gets for free by settling cities. So Julius Caesar is definitely a civ with a really, really low tempo. Now, they still do have the Legion, but part of what enables the Legion so well is the fact that Rome gets that really good early monument, right? So for that reason, I feel like Julius Caesar really needs like another ability, like something that is not a win more. He needs like an ability that allows him to win. So whether that would be like some sort of new interaction with like great generals or something of that nature, that would be cool. Yeah, he definitely needs something else, I think, on top of this, because otherwise I think this guy is just genuinely like a little bit weak. I think Nzinga Mbande is strong, if a little bit boring. I think Sultan Saladin is strong if boring, and I think Abraham Lincoln is just kind of slightly weak, which is kind of like a little bit, I don't want to say like majorly disappointing, but it's like slightly disappointing. I think these are interesting civs in their own right, for sure, and I guess I'm kind of okay with them because they're free essentially, right? So they're cool, new, interesting ways to play the game. Maybe it's because we were spoiled so hard with people like Zhao, right, with his crazy free trade routes and open borders with all city states. All units receive +1 site, and then we had who was that other guy? Not Lautaro. Like Simon Bolivar, +1 movement to all units, promoting a unit does not end its turn. Like we had these like really cool game-breaking, changing things, and these guys just kind of feel like a more of a return to, like, I want to say, like, launch Civ 6, maybe the rise and fall era of leader design, where leaders weren't too crazy. They kind of had interesting. I think they are interesting. I'll take that back slightly. I think these are interesting leaders. I think my expectations for these leaders was slightly higher though, like in terms of like new gameplay mechanics, new flavor. But I think now that I've like seen these guys, I can kind of like adjust down my expectations slightly for the coming leaders, and I'm definitely excited to try these out. I wonder what you guys think I should play first. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video where I talked about the new leaders in Civ 6. I love you all very much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.